All in all, Super Sunday ended up being a wonderful day in sports, in my opinion, including for one of our own here in Paul Chivari, locally in the office building, getting the prediction correct. And I think this show did pretty well Super Bowl Sunday, but shout out to Paulie and I believe Marver for predicting both Rams. I think only Devin and I went with Cincinnati, as the Rams are your new champions, 23-20, from the commercials to the game to the halftime show to the celebration of a poor photographer falling off of the stage. This Super Bowl had everything. So I know by the time we have this part of the show up on the interweb and it is played all over on WCPT, our opinions here on the Sports Cubicle will be old and passe. It is Devin Tingle, Paul Chivari, the marvelous one, Dan Marver, and myself, Mike Mercado. But we have to have some thoughts, share our thoughts of Super Bowl Sunday. And I'll start off with you, Paulie, the one who won the office bet. What did you think about the 56th annual big game?
Well, it was neat to see the team that I predicted at the start of the season go all the way and win it in their home stadium like I thought. But I picked Jalen Ramsey to be a surprise MVP candidate. And as the record shows, he did not have a good game. However, I can't blame him for getting his head twisted on the first Cincinnati touchdown. But at the same time, I think it makes up for a call early in the game where he prevented Cincinnati from scoring and was tugging on a receiver. All in all, I thought it was very entertaining. It was supposed to be a close game. It was supposed to be a good game. It stayed relevant. It stayed close. I don't think it ever got more than 2 scores out of hand. Good halftime show in the middle. The commercials were kind of easygoing. Nothing, too crazy memorable out of it. I think it was everything you could ask for in a Super Bowl.
Yeah, it was a very palatable Super Bowl. It was very neutral. I think it's funny that a lot of people our age and older are now realizing that they're the demographic that the NFL is looking at. So there's a lot of funny memes in that. And we'll get to the youngest stud in our carousel here in just a little bit in Devin Tingle. Before we do that, we go to the marvelous one, our head honcho about the ins and outs of the histories of these sports. And marvelous one, when you saw this matchup of Bengals and Rams and the legacy now that Matthew Stafford, who didn't do anything for 12 years of his career, one Pro Bowl, all of a sudden has as many Super Bowls as Aaron Rodgers. Your thought of what we saw this past Sunday?
Just goes to show you when you have better players surrounding you, you can perform better. And, this game probably wouldn't have been as close if Odell Beckham had not get injured. And by the way, why isn't the Ramsey mask pull subject to booth review? I mean, seriously. But yeah, I did pick the Rams, but I thought they'd win by more. But in the halftime show, I mean, it's not like Katy Perry or even Barry Manilow, but and I was imagining my deceased father watching that. He would have had some choice remarks, but it was entertaining. The whole thing was good. I mean, I like a close game. They had 7 in a row close games. It's unbelievable. And again, for the second straight year, unpandemic interrupted the entire playoffs. Amazing.
It goes to show how crazy times have gone and how fast they've gone. The fact that we've had 2 Super Bowls now, and both of them, the home team hosting it and winning it, and it being Tom Brady winning one, and now Matthew Stafford winning one. And all in all, it was a clean game up until the last about 2 minutes of that game. The refs really swallowed their whistle. Dev, you saw the game. You were seeing the atmosphere. You saw the glitz and glamour of Hollywood hosting and then hoisting a Vince Lombardi trophy. Your thoughts of what you saw between the Bengals and now champion LA Rams?
Well, like I say, if I'm going to keep it brief, the first half of the game, kind of okay. The very end of the game, it's definitely entertaining. Second half, that fourth quarter really came around. I still think the Cincinnati Bengals should have gotten the Super Bowl MVP, because if it wasn't for all those penalties, I don't see the Rams winning that game and that big comeback finish there. So definitely good. It was nice to see 2 different teams here. We'll let Paul toot his whistle for a few more weeks around the office. Like, we let him do it before we start giving him more crap here. Halftime show is a lot of fun. Although I'm with Marver. Katy Perry's is a very close second if I got to go, but definitely something different here. The memes have been fun, music I listen to, even if I think songs like Lose Yourself have become so overrated in the time. But definitely something different here with 2 different teams here. And it's going to be interesting now, because where are we going to go from here? Because we had if you were to say the Rams and the Bengals are going to be your Super Bowl 2-3 years ago, who the hell would have believed you? As both those teams are just, Rams have with Jared Goff were in there a few years ago, but definitely not the Bengals, finishing close to dead last year. But definitely it makes me wonder what's going to be next year, because, we're looking at this. I don't, whereas before I'm like, okay, I could see these teams going back to the Super Bowl. I don't see the Rams or the Bengals going back next year. Maybe 2 or 3 years, but definitely not next year.
I think that's a really interesting point, Dev, looking forward, looking to the future of this. While I may want to say, and going back to the past, that Prince might have been the greatest halftime show in a Super Bowl. Go ahead. What you got, Paulie?
I said, amen. Preach.
Yes, absolutely.
We don't talk about that Super Bowl, guys.
Talk about what happened after the halftime show here in Chicago Bears. But all
I remember was the first 7 seconds of that Super Bowl was the best Super Bowl ever.
Yeah. Devin Hester, Sexy Rexy, Brian Urlacher, move on.
Yeah, Devin Hester, you are ridiculous. We will see you in the Hall of Fame soon enough. Hopefully, Lance Briggs and Peanut Tillman will be right behind you, along with Ola and Kreutz. But speaking of the Bears, speaking of moving forward, Marvelous One brought it up. What happens when you put talent around a player? What happens when someone like Joe Burrow, who was getting sacked left and right, was on the turf left and right? He was so electric, and Jamar Chase is so electric. T. Higgins is so good. They put so many weapons around them that when you put talent together that can live in the big moment, I think there is a blueprint in the NFL now on what you can try to do. And here in Chicago, you want to see what the Bears can do. And to throw a bone to our guy, Paulie, obviously, if you're the Vegas Raiders, you're seeing what happens if you put the right moves, you put the right talent, you put the right scheme together, and you get a little lucky. You can make a serious run in one of the craziest sports in all of sports. But before we put the Super Bowl to rest, before we put the season to rest, and we look forward to training camp, to the draft, and what the Bears are going to do here locally in Chicago, let's talk a little local when it came to Matthew Stafford all those years in Detroit. It's been the hot button topic in all of national media, and it's first take. First things first, Dan Patrick, Dan Lebertard, and we're going to do it here on the Sports Cubicle. Is Matthew Stafford a Hall of Famer now after winning the big one? Is Matthew Stafford, even though he almost gave them the game plenty of times, even though he wasn't spectacular, did make a huge play on that last drive? Is Matthew Stafford now heading to Cannon? We will go with Paulie first.
Not yet. No, not even close. But I do think that it should be recognized that 2 of the best wide receiver seasons have come from his arm.
That's a really good point. Marvelous. When you hear that, you've seen that he played with Megatron. You've seen that he's played with Cooper Kupp. You saw what happened with Odell. Van Jefferson is now a name. He has now a Vince Lombardi trophy. Doesn't have an MVP like a Matt Ryan. Doesn't have all pros, but does have a long career and now has the biggest hardware. Is Matthew Stafford going to the Hall of Fame one day?
Up to me, I'd say no. I mean, you can see what happens. Even Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson have tailed off a bit. I mean, their teams didn't make the playoffs, and they had very poor records. So, again, it all matters upon who you surround your quarterback with, and those 2 are good examples of perhaps the track for our own Mr. Field. So we'll see what happens. But, I mean, you think I was kidding. The 80s, I got to tell you, the 1980s were the sweet spot for performers at the Super. Diana Ross, Billy Manilow, Neil Diamond, Herb Alpert, Billy Joel, and Whitney Houston, and Harry Connick Jr. Oh, bring them back.
Oh, and Elvis Presto, the impersonator.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll let you guys gush off here about past Super Bowl halftime shows. Dev, is Matthew Stafford heading into the Hall of Fame?
Well, before the 2 boomers have their next senior moment, let's take a look. I pulled up Russell Wilson's numbers here. He's got 182 career games played in his career. He's got a 63% completion record. He's just shy of 50,000 passing yards and only 323 touchdowns. Are those terrible numbers? No, not at all. I mean, if the Bears had a quarterback with half those numbers, I think they'd be a much better team. Do I think at the moment Matt Stafford's a Hall of Famer? No, not by a long shot. I would put Eli Manning in before I'd put Matthew Stafford. And Eli, again, doesn't have the best career numbers. He's got those 2 rings.
It's a really interesting point, and we're going to get into a very, muddy point in the Hall of Fame. And again, while I believe the Hall of Fame is a museum, I think the NFL does a better job of, who's a Hall of Famer and who's not a Hall of Famer. And we're going to find out with these offensive numbers and how crazy they are, who gets in and who doesn't? What is that new line? And for lack of a better term, that new Mendoza line of who gets in and who doesn't. But we want to know your thoughts. What did you think of the Super Bowl halftime show? Are you yearning for years past? Are you looking forward until the Island Boys are doing a halftime show in 2.5 years in Miami? What did you think about the big game? Let us know. We're on Twitter at Sports Cubicle TV. It's the marvelous one, Dan Marver. It's Devin Tingle. It's Paul Chivari. I'm Mike Mercado.